You know
But
what? Like you're talking, and all I'm thinking is we need a YouTube team competition. Gloves
yeah,
off. Who
yeah,
cares?
18 plus.
Uncensored, right?
Yeah.
So
What is up, everybody? How you living? No puts given. Tony and Chris, we're back. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Just your weekly weekly reminder as we get into that. Some equipment stuff to talk about today, Tony. We did a fitting survey. We got some wedge results coming up. We had fairway wood results last week. So plenty of equipment related topics. But before that, is that shirt new, Tony?
no, it's not.
I think so.
I just grabbed a shirt. I'm like, I was kind of in sloppy mode.
Yeah.
And it's saying something to be too sloppy for this podcast, but yeah.
Clean and close. Those are my two requirements generally when selecting the outfit. Throw out a little shout out to Lab Golf who's sponsoring this episode today. Thank you, Lab Golf, for doing that. And I guess there's a tease there as well because we have
We
a lab.
a lab. It's not just a lab. It's
Mm-mm.
a lab and other lab and PXG lab and also other putters in the lab.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Those results will be coming up soon. And then just to clarify, this is a lab where we took a lab golf putter. We took the PXG Allen putter and if you've been paying attention to any of the back and forth and bare knuckle video off, they're having a video off, I guess.
More to come on that, apparently.
More
Can't
to
wait.
come on that apparently, but tested those two putters in our new testing environment, which is unbelievably cool.
With
And
the putt view, which is just awesome. And we're just like, it's a good opportunity. Obviously, a hot topic right now with this. PXG claims zero torque, low torque, no torque, lie angle balance, CG balance, all the different types of, I
mhm,
guess, what you could call unconventional approaches to putter design. But good way to get our feet wet on the putt view as we get
mhm,
closer to most wanted season. But yeah, I mean,
mhm.
just the data that we can get out of this thing,
It's gonna be
it's
awesome.
cool. It is
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, so it's
So
kind of dipping our toes in that, and to be clear, this isn't a full. I'm calling it the torque off. is what I want. Is what I want.
I'm not comfortable with that.
I think we should be. I want to call it the torque off.
Oh boy.
Where we take,
Torque off
let's
on your own
say,
time.
5 to 10 putters in that world. Because now we've seen again, like we said,
It's
PXG is their version out. Even roll has its version out, 3 different head styles, but it's kind of zero version out. Again, we've seen pictures, stuff, some images, rumors. Obviously, you got Odyssey, Cameron, all the other major players in that space. Plus, you have other ones like Axis One that existed before and probably saw it in Justin Rose's bag before he ditched it
mm-hmm.
and went a different direction. But point being, this isn't that test. We're not putting all the putters in that category heads
Just
up against each
yeah,
other.
it's just kind of a call it tire kicking curiosity. Let's see what we
Mhm,
find.
mhm,
And I think we've kind of it's already the preliminary results have given us another road to go down. So
mhm.
yeah,
This
we'll
is
be
the
winding around for the foreseeable future.
it's the preliminary torque off. It's not the mega torque off,
I
which would be
still don't like torque off.
no. Well,
Just
you can come up
you torque off in
with
your
a
own time.
different
Like I
name.
said, okay. All right.
In the professional ranks, quick
Uh,
review: the President's Cup. It started out as an absolute snooze fest. U.S. goes up 5-0 day one. Everybody, myself included, is calling for the demise of the President's Cup. It's going to be terrible and it's over. And it didn't change the outcome, but the event was far from over. Mongolian reversal on day two. The Internationals win 5-rip, which again, this is like,
if you were ever going to make a case that a competition at least was partly rigged, like, all right, we gotta make this interesting. Come on.
well, in the way the U.S. got dominated on day two. I mean, losing matches 7-6, 4-3. It's not like this was not close. At least day one, I mean, the Internationals lost several matches, one down, right? 2-1. It was interesting till halfway through the back nine. That stuff was like, holy cow, this is brutal. But long story short, the outcome didn't change. The US won again fairly decidedly. That wasn't a surprise, but I think what got people talking a little bit more was some of the on course behaviors, shall we say. And it got me thinking about this a little bit. And I know in team competitions, we tend to see players be more demonstrative than they would be otherwise, right? We have this very even keel, shouldn't be able to tell what you're shooting type of mentality and approach on the course, right? Whether you just made bogey or birdie, it's kind of like flatlined, right? It's like, oh, okay, players don't really show a lot of emotion, generally speaking. And when they do, it's noteworthy, or they got fined because they said a naughty word. They said a naughty word. Tom Kim was kind of the target because I don't know. Here's my take. Here's my take on this. Tom Kim. I was trying to decide, like, is he the villain that we need in these type of things? Because I think you do. The team competitions are way more interesting when you had an Ian Poulter. It was great because you loved to hate him. On the other side,
Patrick Reed, you hated to love him in the Ryder Cup.
yeah, and he turned in. I mean, God, making putts from everywhere. This stuff, it was great. I like that. I love the trash talking. I think it's. I don't know. I personally really enjoy it. I love that part of the team competitions. But my 2 cents on Tom is, I think he tried a little too hard. I think it was kind of like, it was like a guy that wanted to be like a trash talker but can't or didn't, or like that wasn't really his skill set. So, he's trying to kind of play that role of the bear poker, um, but doesn't really know how to do it. Like, it just came across to me as awkward. Like, really? Really?
Yeah. When you think historically too, like a lot of the stuff is the trash talking. A lot of it historically isn't necessarily trash talking your opponents, right? It's kind of almost back at the crowd
Right.
more so than the competitors. And this is the nature of golf. It's not well suited to trash talking in general. I played in a tournament last weekend. I mentioned, right, there was wrestling,
Right.
but even that was between teammates.
Right.
Um, but
Right.
you think about, that's a great example where you're playing guys.
Hmm.
You're out there on the course. You want to beat them, but they hit a good shot, and you know what he's every time. Hey, good shot, buddy. Good shot, right? Like it's not adversarial by nature, like
Right.
like football is, like basketball is,
Right.
and and even when you're competing against somebody else directly, you're still very much competing against yourself, right? Like they're
Yeah,
not
in the
they're
course,
not
right, yeah,
influencing anything you do
right, they didn't
unless
block your putt from going
right
in, they
unless yeah unless there's a breach of the rules and or etiquette, right? Like you're not going to see
it's not like
gamesmanship where
walking
like
up
if
to the
you're
ninth
if
tee
you're
while you play,
standing
yeah,
over a 10-foot putt and I see you standing over that putt, I'm not going to go in your line and start like
start waving
stomping
start
around
waving your
making
shadow
footprints.
around and
Like yeah,
like
like it's you just don't do that kind of thing. So
yeah. I think
yeah, it's
to me, the other
stop.
issue is that I I think, yeah, by nature, it doesn't really set up to be as adversarial that way. Um, my friends and I, when we play, uh, in that there is plenty of trash talking going on. There's plenty of digs and comments, none of which are suitable for network television. And my sense is that that's kind of a hard part of this too, to really needle guys or do that and get after them in a way that's presentable to the public. I don't know a lot of those professional golfers personally. I do know one round that I played with Pat Perez one time. And I have no
Yeah.
doubt that
Oh
Pat Perez
yeah.
would be a phenomenal trash talker. And in fact, he was the whole day. It was
Uh,
hilarious. We had a blast. None of that, none of that could you ever put on public television. So, like, even these guys that could, I bet Max Homa can really try. Dude's funny. He's quick. He's witty. Zero doubt that Max could just put somebody in a grave, right?
you know
But
what? Like you're talking, and all I'm thinking is we need a YouTube team competition. Gloves
yeah,
off. Who
yeah,
cares?
18 plus.
Uncensored, right?
Yeah,
So
yep. Do it like the roast to Tom Brady, or whatever. Sign the waiver, do the thing, because I think that would be different, and I think it'd be hilarious, and it would be phenomenal. This just it makes it all awkward in a bunch of different levels. And good try, Tom Kim, but you
eh.
lost again. Anyway, all right, we did a fitting survey. We're gonna walk through this because this you may have even taken this survey. Did you, Tony? Did you put your answers into
I
this?
did not. I did not. I typically limit my participation in our surveys to making sure that they work correctly and that we didn't forget anything.
Yeah,
And as you'll see when we do the ticker survey, I failed miserably at that task. So anyway, whoops.
fair. That's fair. But let's talk through it. So this is a survey. What's the purpose of the survey? What's the objective? What are we trying to figure out?
Yeah, I just kind of get a sense for how often golfers are getting fit, their overall experience with fitting. And as you see, kind of the first thing we talk about in the insights piece is not getting fitted for clubs, why they do
Right.
it. So basically, just kind of a far-reaching. Tell us about your your fitting experience, where you got
Uh,
fit, what you got fit. Did you feel like you were had your arm twisted to buy more than you needed? Did you ultimately buy what you were fitted for? That kind of thing. So kind of
mhm,
end to end. And then even looking at, for example, some of the technologies used in fittings and things like that, and trying to glean information and see where fitting is succeeding and where maybe it's coming up short.
mhm. I, as I was just looking through the data kind of preliminarily, and we'll kind of hit the highlights and stuff on each of the different questions here. Kind of what were the big takeaways. One of my first thoughts with the fitting part was we've started to see this a little bit, and we talk about last week. We talked about the hey, could you play one brand throw it back, right? Um, to me, really, the only thing that makes that a viable question or a realistic opportunity, or say, yeah, I could if I did da 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 da, is that nature of getting fit. Getting fit is what creates parity, I think, between brands, right? Where it's like, okay, maybe I'm playing Mizuno irons, maybe I'm playing Vokey wedges, okay, but if you get fit and get dialed in, that changes the entire game. That changes everything.
Yeah, I mean, would you rather be thoroughly fitted for 14 clubs by one brand or not get fitted and have the ability to be totally brand agnostic? That's a trade-off, right? And I,
Hmm.
I would take personally, fit me all day long.
Absolutely.
Give me your
Not even
14
close.
best. So
It's
yeah.
not even close. I mean, you might as well say, "Hey, would you rather just go into some department store, pick something off the rack, any size, something, wear it to your wedding? Let's see how that goes." Or would you rather say, "Hey,
Uh,
you don't get to pick the brand, but it's going to be tailored and fit specifically to you." Like, what are we doing? But let's start with like I said, the very first question we have to address is why aren't people getting fit for golf clubs? People that aren't getting fit, what jumped out to you here?
yeah, so I mean, if you look at the two most popular answers,
Hmm.
the not surprising one to me was the one we hear all the time. I'm not good enough to get fitted. So we heard
Yep.
that from almost 30%. Again, this is, go back to the episode we shot with Ian.
Yeah.
Kind of touched on this a little bit where, yeah, there maybe are guys that aren't good enough, but by and large, like if you can put a decent swing on a golf ball, you're going to benefit from custom fitting. The surprising one, I should mention too, 34%, you know, selected other and wrote in a reason, but as is often the case with our surveys, the reason they wrote in was generally more often than not one of the other choices worded differently. So come on, guys,
Right.
try harder. Um,
Right.
that being said, the one that kind of stood out was 41%, 40.82% saying
Yeah.
fitting costs too much.
Fitting costs too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
What do
so
you
we're
what
like,
do you make
okay,
I mean,
that's
do you agree with that? Like, when you look at those results, say, "Yeah, that kinda
I
mirrors my personal thoughts on it," or do
I
you
you
think
know, I think it's a perception. I can't say that I'd ever really given it that much thought as a barrier. Like
Mhm.
we know like some of these full bag fittings can be $1,000, right? Whatever, but
Right.
I had never thought of it as a major barrier, I guess. And then what was super interesting is I was like, all right, well, we actually asked how much you paid for a fitting.
That's the second one, yeah.
And so for that, we call this one or the second question, right? How much did you pay? 35% said it was free.
Right.
Another 30% said that it was rolled into the cost, and then 10% on top of that said it was less than $100. So you're at 75% paying less than $100, with the
And
majority of that
two-thirds.
paying nothing. So I look at this and go, all right, yeah, you
Yeah.
can go to any number of premium fitting chains, and I understand that, and I get that that's an option for some people. And by and large, I think they do good work. And
Sure.
we've gotten to know Ian over the years. I would say, like, you can go to Ian and afford to go to Ian, go to Ian, right? Like that to me is the no brainer. If you can afford to go to TPI and
I'm going to
and
TPI. Yeah.
right, work with,
Yeah.
Bango or
Mhm.
any of the guys there, do
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
But you don't have to. Right?
Yeah,
75% less than $100.
my my trying to read between the lines on this one is I think that I'm not good enough contingent ends up taking a good chunk of this because we get things lumped into there like, well, I'm not consistent enough or I'm just a beginner or, how can I get fit for something if my swing isn't as consistent, right, as it should be? And that's kind of missing the point. And it's not convenient, where it's like we got into that with some of the questions of like, okay, how far would you have to travel? Where would you get fit? But with a lot of the advent of, again, whether it's just AI or online interfaces or opportunities to narrow things down, it's only going to become easier, I think, to get fit.
I hope so. Yeah, we talked about this, right? We mentioned the Ping wedge fitting tool being forward consumer facing.
Uh-huh.
Titleist has some tools right now that are really good that aren't yet consumer facing. Maybe they will be, but the more you can make some level of fitting, right? Like, yeah, I
Mhm.
would I would love for everybody to go to TPI and get fit for a wedge. But if you can't
Sure.
do that, what's the next best thing? What's the next best thing after that? Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and
Yeah,
and
kind
just
of
get
that
everybody to
good.
understand, like, just because your fitting experience isn't ideal or it isn't perfect doesn't mean there isn't a level which you can still get some benefit that is,
Or
and
get a lot of benefit. I
yeah,
mean,
and have it be convenient and free.
and I think you're gonna see more move to like I said, two-thirds of the answers on fitting costs were either it was free or it was rolled into the cost of the product. So, and I get the need to charge for a fitting on one hand on that part, but I love the idea of, hey, cost you $300 to get fit or whatever. We're going to go ahead and credit 100% of that $300 towards a purchase on anything, and I think that's a much more golfer friendly way to move people through that. Say basically, I think more people would get fit if they knew, hey, it isn't going to cost me anything, which you can do at the demo days and some of those things for sure. Or if I do go get fit, I have credit towards basically purchasing something that I get fit into. And
That's when you can sell the wife too. Like, if I don't buy the clubs, the money's wasted.
it's a sunk cost.
So I might as well just get the clubs.
It's a sunk cost.
Doesn't cost that much more.
How about the travel? Kind of these next two or
Yeah,
three
our
questions.
kind
Like,
of the two insights associated with our third question are really interesting, right? We started by how far do you travel for your
yeah.
fitting? And less than 10 miles was 42% roughly.
Hmm.
Another 30%, 11 to 25, 33%. And so again,
Yeah.
you're around that 75% threshold within 25 miles of home. So it
Hmm.
is convenience. I think convenience plays a huge role in where you get fit. And
Sure.
then looking at the why they chose that location,
Yeah.
we can extrapolate. Like 30% said it was close to my house.
Yep.
I think, if you were to apply a weighting algorithm to that, it probably, would probably sort of number one. And
Yeah.
then it's things like, yeah, they carry the brands I was interested in. That makes sense. And so that's
Mhm.
where a situation where some of these smaller brands that aren't in stores or aren't in a lot of stores suffer a bit, for sure. Fitter's reputation, positive past experience with the fitter, so
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Recommended. So yeah, I mean, pretty much what you would expect. But again, for me, it was just this realization that guys aren't really traveling very far at all to get
No,
fit.
it's right, the
So
people
it's
they're not
convenient.
traveling super far, and it's not super expensive, which that was kinda interesting to me, but yet this one I found kinda interesting. It was like, okay, in terms of where they got fit,
Yeah.
right, the
Local,
number
local
one
offer.
response was
A local. I mean, then this was pretty evenly, or there was no like massive spread here.
right.
Club champion number one, it looks like. So
Mhm,
14.4%. Local off course retailer 13%.
mhm.
And then things like
Demo
demo
day,
days.
13%.
And again, this is
Other
a case where if you go through the others, it's like, you know, they will mention a local off course retailer by name or a big
right,
box retailer by name. So
right, right.
um, so yeah, it is what you to an extent what you would expect. I mean, club champion, I guess maybe a little bit surprising there, but
Yeah, yeah. I
just
mean, I did think it was interesting still yet almost 7% of people at a manufacturer facility, so this would be your Titleist, your TPI, at TaylorMade Kingdom, at, Callaway's facility. I guess the PGX or PXG stores fitting in there, that
yeah.
probably
Yeah, and
heavily
I think it's important,
back.
like when you look at how I worded it in the article itself, like just based on the number,
Mhm.
the extremely high number of people who wrote in the name of their local retailer, that's actually higher than Club Champion.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, so people are getting, we kind of have an idea why they're getting fit, why they're not getting fit. What did you take out of the next couple ones in terms of like what they were actually fit for, or the process of getting fit? Which clubs did they end up with? What were the metrics that were used? What did they actually discuss,
yeah, so
before
it
fitting?
kind of
What
starts
did you
right.
take
You
from
say
that?
every fitting should start with a conversation. That's the first piece of any fitting. Like, all right, what
Yeah.
what what do you hope as the guy who's coming in here, maybe paying some amount of money, maybe looking for something specific, not just hey, well, my wife was across the street shopping, so I'm killing some time. A specific objective, and so yeah, typically performance objectives are discussed, so that's good. And then the fitting process itself, we like that. The current equipment that you have, almost 80% mentioned that comes up. The
Yeah.
one here, if there was and it's not, um, it's a little bit disconcerting. Again, going back to the conversation we had with Ian, only 25%, 26 if you want to round up, mentioned that budget was part of the conversation.
Hmm.
And that's, I mean, that to me is certainly the potential for a big miss where
Right.
you're getting, or I'm fitting you for a club and I haven't bothered to ask you how much you're willing to spend. And if I'm gonna load you up with exotic shafts, and
Yeah.
we're gonna make sure that you fit into an auto flex and that sort of thing, like we should probably ask about your budget first. So
I know. It's interesting because, like you said, absolutely things should be no-brainers. You talk about performance of right. What are you looking to achieve? What are we trying to accomplish here? Um, and it's almost like, hey, if we ask that, then I can leverage the potential here is, hey, we talked about performance. I can meet that objective by doing this, da 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 da. And if I don't ask about budget, I've taken care of your number one concern, which is performance, right? So we talked about performance. We talked about the process. Here are the brands that you like. I went check, 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 check. Oh, and by the way, it's a $1,200 driver. I still think that's where I'll tell a quick story. I'm going to tell a quick story, Tony.
okay.
I had a buddy that just ended up. He just got fit for a Titleist GT driver, GT2 driver, and he went to a big box store, kind of like a can't remember if it was Club Chamber, whatever it was. No, it was actually a Titleist fitter. I believe it was a Titleist. It was
Like
a
a
Titleist.
demo day type of.
Yeah, but it was a Titleist fitter, and he ended up in a 55 gram stock Tensei shaft, and he was getting the best number. And he was so thrilled because he's like, "Hey, I didn't." He's like, "I don't mind." Like he's had graphite design stuff in there before. He's maybe even had a Ventus in there before, but he was like, "I don't want to pay another $350 if I don't need to. I don't even want to pay another $200 if I don't need to." And he's like, "This is great." He's like, "This is the first time I went through a fitting where I wasn't told that I needed to get a an upcharge shaft or something exotic." Where, and to me, it said two things. One, Titleist does a really good job of scrutinizing what are their inline, or whether we call them preferred shafts or stock shafts or whatever it is. But Titleist does a really really good job of scrutinizing that to make sure that what's in the lineup is, I think, pretty reflective of the price point that they're at. But then secondarily, if there isn't any performance benefits, like great. Do you think he's going to go back to that fitter again now when he has a question about a fairway wood or whatever? Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So not only did that guy fit him into a good product, but he just created an awful lot of trust with that individual when they need to come back too. So anyway, good job, Titleist fitting guy that fit my buddy Chris Parks. Way to go. Appreciate you.
there you go.
Good job. How about fitting metrics, pressure to buy? Did you buy? Why didn't you buy?
Yeah.
What was
So
the
real quick,
conversation?
we also asked what clubs you've been fitting,
Oh
got
yeah.
fit for.
Yeah.
No huge surprise. Irons number one, almost because you almost have to get fit right now for irons. Nobody has like inventory of 30 sets sitting in the back of stock, right?
Yeah.
Like everything with when you get
Yeah.
into lie angles and um, shaft grip preferences, right? Like it's
Mhm.
just
Yeah, the days of
more so
having
than any club.
34 different options on the wall
Yeah.
ain't happening.
Uh, drivers next. Surprisingly, we found putters were the least fit club that everybody carries. I want to preface it that way. Like hybrids and utility irons, lower still, but
Right.
that's a club. Some people carry neither of those.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Everybody has a putter in the bag. My question is, why do you think it's so low? Is it because there isn't universal agreement on how to incorporate strokes gained into a fitting? I mean, like you take something like ball speed, and even really crappy monitors now can measure ball speed, right? Okay, great. Like every decent piece of technology you have is going to spit out, 90% of these things. Is it because we don't have a way to universally talk about strokes gained? Or because to me, like of all the different things, that's like kind of the most important. Like people, what was it? 2/3 of them said, or 77% said, "Hey, we talked about performance." Well, how do you talk about performance gains on one end and not talk about the defining metric of performance on the other end?
yeah, I think part of it is a lack of understanding of strokes gained. That's probably most of it. And then with that, if a fitter doesn't necessarily understand it, or even if the fitter has a grasp, but the average golfer going in for a fitting doesn't understand how to take strokes gain logic and apply it to a fitting, then it becomes an issue of application.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
between
think,
understanding and application, it's tricky.
yeah, I mean, I think the other part is too is hopefully if you get better ball speed, let's say that you had higher ball speed, more distance, more optimal launch angles, so on and so forth. Like if you get yeses to those questions, you shouldn't get a no on strokes gained, right? Like if you get better descent angles, if you get more optimal launch windows, and you get, let's say, more distance out of a driver, shouldn't that lead to better strokes gained no matter what?
Yeah,
Almost.
and
That's it.
and part of the other issue here, especially as it pertains to driver fitting, long club fitting, where whether where you're going to be in the rough more often,
Sure.
and being in that rough matters. If you look at the way most fitting environments are set up,
Hmm.
there isn't really rough. Like wide open driving range, you're
Yeah.
integrating, like for example, a TrackMan roll model. So
Sure.
even once the ball hits the ground, everything gets treated the same.
Sure.
And so you're not in most fitting environments incorporating real world penalties. Say like you don't see like, oh my god, that ball landed in the rough and rolled nowhere, or oh
Hmm.
shit, that ball is stuck behind a tree. You don't get
Yeah.
any of those kind of on course realities, and those scenarios are integral to a good strokes gain calculation. So
Mhm.
that's another piece of it.
Yeah. How do we improve fitting? Because this is, based on all of this, I thought this was interesting. When people said, okay, how do we actually make fitting better for the consumer?
This one's where this is.
What
It's a
what's
lot of.
what's your favorite answer of these?
Yeah, I think for iron sets, I've talked about this before, but this idea that it would be nice if during a fitting you hit more than the 7 iron or the 6 iron, depending on which loft a given fitter.
Yeah,
Typically, it's a 7 iron nowadays because that's what the demos are. It's this
yeah,
whole idea that you know you can extrapolate a full iron set makeup from a 7 iron. And yeah, like
mhm,
Ping's got some great tools to help out with this,
yeah.
and
Ping
there are
Copilot.
fitters who honestly believe they can,
Hmm.
and some of them can, some of them can't.
Yeah.
And there are probably a significant percentage of other fitters who've never given it a moment's thought.
Hmm.
And so that one to me is like, if you're getting fit for an iron, like I would love to hit, 5.79, 5.7 pitch, something like that, so I can really see the totality of the set. I said this before, we see in Most Wanted testing frequently where
Hmm.
the best 5 iron for you is not on, or start at the 7 iron. The best 7 iron for you may not be your best, and very often isn't your best long iron. It's not your best short iron
Yeah.
or set wedge. And so, like, hey, maybe I'd be better off with the club that's third best in the 7 iron because it's also second best in the 5 iron and best
Where I need
overall at
it.
the wedge. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you kind of take the average of the long, middle, short, that's probably a better way to look at it. The other one, that a couple others that were up there, so almost 30% for both of these. Different fitting environments. So I expect that a lot of that is guys who were fit indoors wishing they could be outdoors.
Yeah.
And again, I think,
Yep.
and it's
Which
a
I
mixed
get.
bag because I think, yeah, like there's certainly benefit iron fitting in particular of being outdoors.
Hmm.
There's also some things you can do in an indoor fitting environment that you can't do outdoors.
Yeah.
There's also something to be said for having total control of the environment, so you don't have to worry about wind and things like that
Sure.
impacting. So you can make a case for either one, but that's certainly something that came up. And then the other big notable is just having more head and shaft options to choose from. And so
Yeah.
if you think about, still a lot of places that are just pulling out of fitting carts,
Hmm.
and those fitting carts maybe only have the three stock shafts and one or two others. So
Yeah.
overcoming those limitations, I think, is big picture.
Yeah. I think if I could do anything, and again, we're not talking about costs or feasibility and stuff right now. We're talking more theoretical. Like, how do you actually make fitting better? The two things that I kind of took from this one too. One is you mentioned, companies have a lot of stuff that in information and knowledge that isn't necessarily consumer facing. Meaning, right? It's internal. It's for their fitters, and obviously you want people to go see that fitter in their product. And I totally get that. It makes total sense from a business standpoint, and I understand that. I would love to see things become more convenient for all golfers to get fit. And if that means a company taking some of their internal, making it more consumer friendly, I think that would be fantastic. I would love to see somebody be able to get fit. I mean, take Copilot. Like that's a great example where there's a lot of good information that Ping has where they can build out. Like I was looking at this and I thought it was super interesting that like taking that 7 iron data and I said, hey, I want to play a combo set. How accurately it could predict where I should split that set in between which irons, right? And going back and testing it against if I took Corey Connors or one of their staffers through it and said, "Hey, how's his did the algorithm correctly predict what he figured out through months and months of testing?" You go, "Well, yeah, it did. 98.9% of the time, it did." It's like, oh my gosh, how do we get that type of information in a place where I could send in my 7 iron data? I said, "Okay, I went to I did this. Here's my data. Da 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 da." Build this out for me. That's one thing. The second thing that I wish that we could do with fitting is have more of a feedback loop because it's been proposed to me by one Lou Stagner at one point in time that fitting's meaningless. It was kind of this existential conversation we were having, like kind of like, well, prove to me that it actually helps people.
And that is
We so if I do drop that $1,200 on the driver because on the screen it showed me I hit it 8 yards further. My dispersion was better by X amount. Okay, whatever, that's fine. Shouldn't I be able to prove that out over the next X amount of time?
Yeah, and
Like, where's
it's an amazing conversation to think, well, you want to go, yeah, of course it works, because I feel like I hit this club better than the one I had before.
Uh-huh.
And again, it's opinion, and sometimes there is data, and Lou works with obviously a pretty large data set.
Yeah.
Too big, some have said. Like, you have too much data, it doesn't count.
Too much information.
But yeah, this is actually, so as Lou and I had this conversation, and this goes back, let's see, year and a half ago,
Uh-huh.
and he was like, is there any proof that it works? And I'm like, well, anecdotally, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, but anecdotally that's not real data. That's not evidence.
No,
That's really
no.
just an opinion.
Right.
And so I reached out to a couple of people. I'm like, have you done post
Has anybody
fitting?
actually tested whether or
And
not
and
fitting-
maybe those are underway. Maybe they've been undertaken. But at the time, like, I talked to one of the guys that I would have expected. Oh yeah, we've looked at it. We can quantify. One of my go-to nerd guys for this type of thing. And he was like, yeah, no, we've never done that.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting. We talked
I
about it,
think
we've
we
never done
should.
it.
I mean, that would be, like, inherently we believe, okay, and I see it and I get it and I understand it, why we had this was the crossfield conversation before, right? Of the shaft doesn't matter. I'm like, well, have you ever seen somebody hit a golf club, hit a golf ball without a shaft? Like, it absolutely matters. We could probably talk about this for.
Well, let's get to the last one, the bonus, right? Because I did that
go to the
YouTube thing
bonus.
where it was like, yeah, because you watch those YouTube videos and like, if you stick around for the whole video, I'll give you my special bonus tip. So this is my special bonus insight.
Around for 40
If you
minutes.
stick around for the whole article, this whole podcast. So we're curious about radar technology indoors, right? We've talked about the limitations, ability to capture spin data. Doesn't matter what unit it is, they have all historically struggled. And so Titleist came out with the RCT ball, which doesn't solve all the problems, but makes it better.
A lot of them.
Improves, right? We want improvement. We don't want perfection. And so we honed in on just users who did fittings indoors, and then who could actually, the ones who knew the technology, and said, for those of you who knew you used a radar-based launch monitor in an indoor environment, did you guys use RCT balls? Because those, again, will give you accurate spin rates, which is kind of a big deal in fitting.
Huge.
And almost 60%, 58.49 to be precise, said no, RCT balls were not used. And so we have this technology, which we know improves the accuracy of spin capture indoors with radar-based launch monitors. It is readily available, and yet the survey results suggest that a significant number of people, businesses, whatever you want to call it, who fit in these environments are not leveraging the best available technology in a golf ball. So we can split hairs like, oh well, you're using TrackMan or Flight Scope or whatever. But if you're not using the right golf ball, because then it's, again, it comes down to the fitter's belief in his own ability to understand what was captured correctly and what wasn't. And again, I don't care how good you are, unless you're getting something that's wildly off. Which sometimes happens. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it's not. So if you're not accurately capturing spin, I'm not sure how you can be really confident in your fittings.
We're off next week. We'll be out and about doing
deep on this one.
things. When we come back the week after, we're going to recap some stuff. We're going to be kind of towards the end of our testing season. We'll have wedge results, which incorporate wet wedge performance, which is a big deal. We had fairway wood results the other week. We'll dive into that more specifically. We may even kind of do a recap on just most wanted testing throughout the year, winners and losers, and kind of recap all of that stuff, and see if there's any other new equipment stuff that's popped up in the meantime as well. Does that sound like a plan?
Let's do that.
Let's do it. That's coming at you in 2 weeks. As always, if you have questions, particularly fitting questions on this one, thoughts, hopes, dreams, let us know. Until next time, we're out.